So yeah, now, so now for this segment, I want to draw from a couple really well done articles concerning the role of women in the Yakuza. Specifically, this article, a couple articles by the same author here, Stephanie Nakajima. Hopefully, I'm not mispronouncing that surname. Now, at least in my more osmosis learning of Japanese history and society, which should be definitely shored up on, women in the country's organized crime network really escapes me. I'm more familiar with the Italian or Italian American crime families and their attitudes towards women or role of women in their affairs. In fact, how I read them, it was really within the same scholarship that Nakajima here presents in the article. But I do have some questions on our author's concept of active participation, albeit humbly, and it's definitely and it can easily definitely can fall into the realm of nitpicking because I'm pretty much describing it within the an analytical framework of cultural anthropology and feminist analysis. We'll explain that a little later when we actually get to after we go by the scholarship or go through the scholarship. There we go. Now, like before, I'm not going to be covering the entire article, despite having about like 7 pages of script to go through. But I am going to be hopefully focusing mostly on Nakajima's arguments, or at least the arguments that I want to pull through in order to elaborate more on the role of Yakuza wives in criminal affairs, which we'll explore a little later. Now, as many good authors, or many good, at least, monographs go, our author covers the scholarship, and certainly the reason I haven't come across scholarship on Yakuza wives, or at least women in the Yakuza crime network. First, originally, because of the male-dominated culture of this form of organized crime. At least within the Italian mafia, the women of these mobsters were viewed in past scholarship as more in the passive role. Passive role either to keep the families of the men separate from the crime families affairs, or maintain the culture of masculine virtue, as the men not only participate in rites of passage, but also assume roles of dominance and violence within their community. Though later literature, and this is where we finally transition into a greater understanding of women in organized crime, took a more reflective approach to this and pointed out that there were women who held power and sway in the mafia, either with their relation to the men in power as wives, family members, or mistresses, that can assume the positions of power as head of the family when their husbands or sons are absent to run things, pretty much. Also, past scholarship assumed that these women were unfit to be hardened criminals, and were, in short, ignorant to the occasional violence, quote unquote, occasional violence or sway these women had in the family. And when we turn to scholarship on Japanese organized crime, we now hit a roadblock because most of the scholarship has a language barrier. Although Japanese scholars have done a wonderful job in their study of the Yakuza, there is a lack of at least English scholarship on the matter. Of course, reflected on my own little self that read the abundant material on the mob, but barely anything on the Yakuza. I also do know that gathering anthropological data on these organizations are difficult because they have incentives to avoid giving the whole truth to scholars, and the information we can get from them typically is in the context of anonymous ex-members from then current. Actually, just a quick tangent. I put another source that will be in the description down below about one anthropologist conducting a survey in New York's downtown area. It is a very interesting survey, or at least a very interesting read, because he is recording the testimony of people who also committed crimes, which we in the liberal arts at least call a ethical dilemma. Because we not only have to gather data, but we also have to maintain rapport. It's a bundle of intrigue on the anthropologist's part, but also a very well fleshed out study of criminal life and structures. Because ultimately, criminal organization is an organization of people. The better we are well studied on it, the better that we can at least execute or support policies to prevent it. And I'm not talking about just simply, isn't just simply policing. It is also getting it from the stem of the issue. Now, coming back to Yakuza scholarship in terms of media, it unfortunately opens popular stereotypes, like I mentioned, to be broadcasted in either language channel, as media typically lags behind or overemphasizes scholarship, and scholarly cooperation is usually a better means of informing people's popular perceptions and policy over stereotypes, as I hope everyone here knows. In fact, Nakajima asserts this in this article, despite the article being a piece of cultural criminology. She aims to not glorify or romanticize the criminal underworld, which the field sometimes has a tendency to do so. Now, finally, we actually get to the meat and potatoes of this. And what were the roles and influence of Yakuza women? Again, more specifically, the wives. Well, first, why do women end up in Yakuza families? Well, according to this article, at least, it's mostly a emotional and quote-unquote not based on a calculated rational maneuver. In contrast to the aforementioned women of Western organized crime, these women also fall into the more, quote, traditional form of emotionally supporting their husbands and rearing children. Which, at least again within my lens, or within at least my framework of thinking, doesn't sound very non-calculated and non-rational. But we'll get there soon. These conclusions could definitely be the result of the lack of empirical research, as Nakajima mentions, and yeah, the research is also not there. This is a very understudied subject, especially in the case these wives never concern themselves with Yakuza affairs or the criminal organization's affairs, except in the cases where they conduct bank transfers or sign contracts. Oh wait, no, except when the husband conduct bank transfers or sign contracts and leases in the names of their wives rather than their own. Now, I will want to point out that Nakajima asserts this is not active participation, and is more on the whims of the husband. And yes, she is using it within the, I believe, in the context of culpability and the field of criminology. But as again, someone who's reading it with a mixed lens of feminist analysis and cultural anthropology, the former that asserts everyone is a actor that rationalizes and operates in and outside their given roles and expectations as an agent of their own discretion. I'm sort of raising my hands at this. I'm wondering if there are cases where the wives know about this practice. As Nakajima notes, it is a common practice. I would expect that at least at some point, these wives do know that their husbands are signing bank transfers or conducting bank transfers in their name. Later in the work, she mentions that there are some wives, or it is very commonplace for wives to take day jobs, or instead of simply staying at home. Which I read as an active means of maintaining public appearances. I don't see that as an inactive role in at least maintaining the status quo of the marriage and husband's position in the crime family, as maintaining the role of an upstanding citizen is definitely a means to keep investigators at bay, or not investigating the husband. And again, I'd like to emphasize this is from my lens, as I'm likely referring to the activity of the wives outside of the Yakuza's crime structure, in contrast to our author's reference, which definitely has probably has more layers than mine, admittedly. I mean, I always fear that what I just mentioned was just what I just said is more could fall into the realm of ha, gotcha. But no, I again, it's within my own framework in order to think. Hey, Nabo, how's it going? Oh, it looks like you're buried behind me. Let me actually let me just shrink down. Ow! 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 Right at the beginning of it, isn't it? Actually, I'm just gonna stick with this and just move you up. I'll change it when we actually get into the Yakuza game again. Actually, no, I don't need to change it because it's a separate scene. So yeah, welcome to the stream, Nabo. We are currently We currently went through the role of Yakuza wives. Yeah, always bunk, always bunk. Again, I have to get around to getting more of those sound effects into the into what is it? Yeah, hands. I've had hands for a while. Huh. But I just felt something wet on my side for some reason. Huh. Weird. But again, just to sum up, what's the word? Just to sum up at least what you missed, besides the scholarship, which I don't like to quickly refer to, is that the role of Yakuza wives are at least within a more passive, more of a passive and supporting role, which definitely does not really go into the realm of actively participating in the Yakuza affairs, but ultimately they are supporting or providing a cover for their husbands that are participating in Yakuza affairs. Nonetheless, while the trends in the Italian mafia have been moving to be more flexible in the role of women in criminal affairs, the Yakuza remains very rigid, keeping their wives in a world for and by men, as quoted by as Nakajima notes. As Nakajima's ninth respondent mentions, I don't think women are able to really step into it. It's just not possible for women to be a part of that world. This continues to cement that the picture of the Yakuza wife as one in the passive or non-existent role in their husband's affairs. There might be the idea of Boryokutan, or a form of chivalry, which Nakajima covers in a very well gendered history in this article we're referencing. But female inferiority is nonetheless an accepted facet of the Yakuza subculture, as noted by her seventh despondent, as there is still this lingering old-fashioned belief that women should stay in a supporting role, which ties to contrast a storytelling archetype found in at least Japanese media, where we will be breaking off to a more casual media-related transition to where does the archetype of the Yakuza Onna Oyoban, or matriarch, comes from. Well, despite it being very uncommon, then the passive role of many Yakuza wives, there are and were instances where the family's matriarch took active control of the organization. Like Italian mafia families, these women, when the patriarch or sons are absent in running it, assume power and command their subordinates like that of a patriarch. But the scholarship and whatever current research we have on this puts these women as more outliers. Outliers that are intriguing, but outliers nonetheless because of the aforementioned sexism. But again, the research is also not there to make concrete conclusions, so this is it for now, let's just say. I mean, this article is from 2014, so a lot can change within at least 9 years. There is also undoubtedly influence from U.S. exported films, like those from the gangster genre, that ended up synthesizing synthesizing with the concept of a Yakuza matriarch, with the trope of the queen pin, albeit with a Japanese twist in their domestic film industry. And where does that lead us? Well, in a modern example, we have manga/anime like Way of the House Husband, where the character Hibari Tori is the matriarch of the clan that carries herself with authority, which she uses to dictate her subordinates to work with her at a grocery mart. It is a very comedic series, which I highly recommend. Rewinding back to 1969, where this trope really picked up. We have the elder sister, Blind Women's Curse. My apologies. The elder sister back in 1969, and Blind Women's Curse in 1970, and the Yakuza Lady series that lasted from 86 to even 2005, featuring these cases where women take control of the family and its affairs. This could also be the result of scholarship on organized crimes shifting to understand the role of women in its structure. Media can lag behind scholarship, but there are cases where media still draws upon scholarship for inspiration, or at least a level of, or at least a reflection on previous tropes. This could also be the result of Japan's feminist movements during the 60s to 70s, and thusly the insertion of interdisciplinary concepts into media, like how history from the 1960s impacted the success of the Hollywood Western. On a tangent, Japan's various feminist movements are also another interesting subject that I wish my East Asia in film course could have at least dabbled in with, instead of the singular paragraph collecting dust in our textbooks. I recommend looking into it, my legionaries. So I argue I argue the reason why we have this trope, or at least the trope of a Yakuza matriarch, is the result of these rare occurrences of the Ona Oyaban is the combination of these outlier situations of women becoming authorities within a Yakuza family, in addition to stereotype the preceding stereotypes or popular myths surrounding Yakuza women, in conjunction of American gangster films that ultimately results in a cross-cultural which results in a cross-cultural synthesization. My tongue is dead today. It's limp. It is not cooperating with words today. And here we return to Nakajima's point of the romanticization and glorification of criminology, informing or becoming obscured by the media draws upon. The utilization of stereotypes as a mean to develop archetypes, which, although certainly entertaining, does need to be questioned with its reality. I mean, I am going to continue to have fun with today's meats and potatoes, that being Yakuza 0, but I know that it's still at least, not at least, it is practically Yakuza propaganda, but I say understanding it, or understanding the reality of it, enriches why and how this media seeks to entertain us. I guess without further ado, I hope you all enjoy that. For at least those who would watch the later video, like, comment, subscribe. Thank you for staying. And now I have to figure out what to write for next week. Maybe some like archaeology in the news segment. I mean, like, this took about like 2 weeks. And